Go ahead.
Hey, I'm m.pergrem, and I'm going to talk to you about my interpretation of safe space. And I wanted to share with you this definition that young people from harm-free zones came up with for community, because I felt like it really applied to this vlog and what people are talking about this week. So community. And by community, we mean communities of the oppressed. Communities are shaped by daily living, or of shared history, or shared identity, or of shared struggle, or of shared experience, or of shared resistance, or of shared visions. We often begin with communities that are present and not united or in solidarity, but fragmented, dispersed, and often not self-aware as communities. Solidarity is born of community investment. Community members experience degrees and forms of investment in a community. They experience a sense of place, a sense of belonging, a sense of support, of companionship, of shared strategies for survival, and are often frequently of shared identity. And I think that that's what we mean when we talk about safe space, right? Like, we look for all of those things. We're not like at a place where we're trying to build coalition or necessarily like define or figure out our differences. What we want is signifiers of community, signifiers of safety, signifiers of like harm-free zones. And so I think that there are certainly a lot of times in which like I feel privilege, and privilege manifests itself in many ways for me when I'm in a like assumed safe space, or when I'm feeling a sense of community. And that comes out for me in ways that like I'm able to use language in a way that is accepted and acknowledged and validated by my fellow community members, that I'm able to dress and behave a certain way. I don't always have to be like on top of it, or like trying to impress. I get a sense of that belonging, a sense of support where I get to be myself, right? That I don't get to experience in places I wouldn't deem community, or spaces I would feel close to harm or unsafe. But also, like, talking about the queer community specifically, or like spaces for us that are deemed safe, spaces in which like we're supposed to be able to express our community. We, being a like Black, light-skinned, queer woman, are definitely lots of times in which I wouldn't call it necessarily not feeling safe, but sometimes, but mostly an inability to identify, and thus like the things I were talking about earlier, such as language, such as like ways of being, the way I wear my hair, the way I dress, what I find attractive, what I think other people find attractive, aren't necessarily validated or understood or even interpreted in the same way. And I think specifically in the queer community, and when I say queer, I also mean like queer not gay, or like queer not dyke. Like there's a fetishizing that happens, or like an eroticizing or romanticizing that happens of brown bodies, because they're kind of stealing our shit. But like because queer communities are familiar with terms like anti-racism or white allies, or racial oppression, right? And it's supposed to be like this thing that they're working on, or this way in which like they're not assimilating. So like brown bodies within the queer community, which is still a mostly white community, which is still like all white club, which is still upheld by concepts and beliefs of white supremacy. They're racism and white supremacy and privilege and those things manifest in other ways, I think, like fetishizing and romanticizing and things like that. And I guess in a time when actually, I don't know that I want to share any experiences, but thanks for listening, and big props to the young people of Harm-Free Zones and their really cool definition of community.